Stop throwing coffee grounds and eggshells straight into your compost pile and assuming you've fed your garden. That habit is costing you stronger roots, better fruit set, and long-term soil structure. I see it all the time. Gardeners toss these materials in randomly, never process them properly, then wonder why their tomatoes still get blossom and rot or their greens stall out mid-season. Coffee and eggshells are powerful, but only if you use them with intention. If you're serious about growing better food, not just bigger plants but more nutrient-dense harvests, subscribe to the Farm Logic channel. This is where we break down what actually works in real beds, not just theory. Now let's get into it. Coffee grounds are not a fertilizer, and treating them like one is your first mistake. Fresh used coffee grounds contain roughly 2% nitrogen by volume, along with small amounts of potassium, phosphorus, magnesium, and trace minerals. That sounds impressive on paper, but here's the reality. Most of that nitrogen is tied up in organic form. It doesn't become plant available overnight. If you dump thick layers of wet grounds directly around your plants, especially in raised beds, you can create a dense mat that repels water and temporarily ties up nitrogen during decomposition. I've tested this in 2 identical raised beds, one with loose incorporation of coffee grounds at 10% by volume in the top 6 inches of soil, and another where grounds were layered thickly around the surface. The incorporated bed showed steady growth in lettuce and kale. The layered bed had slower early growth and uneven moisture penetration. Same soil, same irrigation, different results. The difference is oxygen and microbial balance. When you mix coffee grounds lightly into soil, about 1 part grounds to 9 parts soil or compost, you stimulate microbial activity. Bacteria begin breaking down the organic nitrogen, gradually releasing it. In a small backyard bed that's 4 feet by 8 feet, you're looking at about 1 5-gallon bucket of used grounds spread thinly and worked into the top layer at the start of the season. That's it. More is not better. Eggshells are even more misunderstood. Crushed eggshells are primarily calcium carbonate, similar to agricultural lime, but far slower to break down. Tossing large shell pieces into the soil and expecting immediate calcium availability is unrealistic. I've dug up shells a year later that were still recognizable. If you want calcium that actually supports fruiting crops like tomatoes, peppers, and squash, you need to process the shells properly. I rinse them, dry them completely, then bake them at low heat, around 120 to 150 degrees Celsius, for 20 minutes to remove residual moisture and make them brittle. After that, I grind them into a fine powder. Not coarse flakes, powder. The finer the grind, the faster microbes and soil acids can act on it. In a 4x8 raised bed, I'll add about 2 cups of powdered eggshell per bed and blend it evenly into the root zone before transplanting heavy feeders. That's enough to supplement calcium over the season without spiking pH dramatically. And that brings us to something most gardeners ignore. pH balance matters more than raw nutrient content. Coffee grounds are slightly acidic when fresh, but used grounds are closer to neutral, typically around 6.5 to 6.8. Eggshell powder is alkaline. When you use them together correctly, they balance each other in a way that stabilizes soil biology instead of swinging it. This is why I call it a power duo, but only when processed and applied strategically. Here's how I use them together in real systems. In an in-ground vegetable plot with moderately loamy soil, I'll work in compost first, about 1 inch across the surface. Then I mix in coffee grounds at no more than 10% of total organic amendment volume. Finally, I add finely ground eggshell powder at roughly 1 cup per 10 square feet. I irrigate deeply and let the bed sit for 1 to 2 weeks before transplanting. That waiting period allows microbes to start cycling nutrients so seedlings aren't competing with decomposition. In raised beds, where soil volume is limited and swings happen faster, moderation matters even more. I never exceed 5 to 7% coffee grounds by volume in these systems. Raised beds can compact if you overload them with fine organic material. The goal is stimulation, not suffocation. Now let's talk about hydroponics, because this surprises people. You do not dump coffee grounds or eggshells into a hydro reservoir. That's a guaranteed clog and biofilm problem. But you can use extracts. I've experimented with aerated compost teas where coffee grounds make up about 10% of the solid input, combined with high-quality compost and molasses. Brewed for 24 hours with strong aeration, strained thoroughly, and applied as a root drench in soilless systems, this can boost microbial diversity in cocoa or peat-based media. Eggshells, on the other hand, can be steeped in vinegar to create a calcium acetate solution. 1 part powdered shell to 5 parts vinegar, left to react until bubbling stops, then diluted heavily, about 1 tablespoon per gallon of water. That's an emergency supplement, not a primary nutrient source. But let me be blunt, if you're struggling with nutrient lockout or inconsistent watering, no kitchen scrap trick will fix poor monitoring. That's where tools matter. I regularly check soil moisture and pH before and after amendments. A simple device like a 4-in-1 soil moisture meter with digital plant temperature, soil moisture testing, pH meter, and sunlight intensity reading takes the guesswork out. I've used similar meters to confirm whether my coffee-heavy beds were retaining too much moisture or if eggshell additions were nudging pH upward over time. The link to the one I recommend is in the description if you want to measure instead of guessing. Because here's the trade-off nobody talks about. Too many coffee grounds can increase fungal dominance. That's great for perennial systems and fruit trees, but in annual vegetable beds, heavy bacterial activity often drives faster nutrient turnover. I've seen strawberry beds thrive with slightly higher coffee inputs, while spinach prefers a lighter hand. Eggshells can slowly raise pH over repeated seasons. If you're already gardening in alkaline soil, adding powdered shell year after year can push you further from optimal nutrient availability. In that case, composted manure or gypsum may be better calcium sources. This is why serious gardeners test, observe, adjust. One of the most effective uses I've found for this duo is in transplant holes. For tomatoes, I mix 1 tablespoon of powdered eggshell and a small handful of compost blended with a tablespoon of coffee grounds into the backfill soil. Not layered, mixed. Then I water deeply. Over the season, I've consistently seen stronger stem development and fewer calcium-related fruit issues compared to control plants without the amendment. For container growers, the ratios tighten further. In a 5-gallon grow bag, you're looking at, well, no more than 2 tablespoons of coffee grounds mixed into the top few inches of soil and 1 teaspoon of powdered eggshell blended thoroughly at planting. Containers really do magnify mistakes. The deeper principle here is this: soil health is about biology and balance, not just dumping nutrients. Coffee grounds feed microbes. Eggshells buffer calcium and pH slowly. Together they improve structure, water retention, and long-term fertility when used deliberately. If you're just tossing them in randomly, you're wasting potential. I've grown in sandy backyard plots, high-density raised beds, and controlled hydroponic systems. The gardens that perform best are the ones where inputs are measured, not emotional. Kitchen scraps are tools. Used correctly, they're powerful. Used casually, they're clutter. So stop throwing away coffee and eggshells, but also stop pretending they're magic on their own. Process them, grind them, measure them, monitor your soil. Let biology do the heavy lifting. If this kind of practical, tested approach is how you want to grow, subscribe to the Farm Logic channel. Share this video with another gardener who's serious about improving their soil instead of chasing trends. The more we focus on real results, the better food we grow, and that's the whole point.